You will never believe how close your host, Mark Geragos, gets you to the biggest breaking news story of the day on this week's episode of Two Angry Men with Harvey Levin and Mark Geragos. Don't take my word for it, though. Harvey, take it away.
We're about to start Two Angry Men. Mark and I just finished the podcast. Wait till you hear what he found out eavesdropping at a restaurant in Washington, D.C. at the table next to him. Unbelievable. What is happening to our government? What is happening to our justice system? 30 more people have been indicted by the federal government, by the Department of Justice, for daring to stage a protest in a Minneapolis church. With all the things going on in this country, they are treating this like this is a revolution against the government. What is going on in this country, Mark?
As we're sitting here today, they unsealed an indictment this Friday, as we're taping this, unsealed an indictment in Minnesota, the Don Lemon indictment. It's now been expanded. I think 39 people are listed, including Don's cameraman today. I think, if I recognize the name, that's one of the 39 people, and a lot of citizens. And I think people described as bloggers and otherwise. I mean, and as we're also talking on Friday afternoon, a number of these people, if not all of them, are in custody awaiting their detention hearing. I foresee they'll be released, but this is serious criminal law, federal criminal law. I mean, they're coming for these people, and 39 people, a grand jury indicted. It's stunning, actually. I haven't seen something like this since the last time in LA they were doing an MS-13 style indictment.
Yeah, I mean, they are treating it like that. So basically, one of the lackeys goes into the grand jury and says there's a First Amendment right of freedom of religion. They never mention free speech. They just talk about freedom of religion. They say, oh my God, how dare these people interfere with these people in the church who are trying to worship God? And that's all they hear, and that's against the law. And so they indict because they never understand the context of it.
Well, I will tell you, they've done the FACE Act and the Klan Act, and
the Klan Act.
Yeah, I'm telling you. But this is part of the problem with the justice system, and we don't like whose ox is getting gored, the old expression now. But I didn't like it when it was the other way around either.
I didn't either. But it's not like this. It's not like this. It is not like this. Look, the Stormy Daniels, the Stormy Daniels prosecution with Donald Trump was ridiculous. I mean, that was just a political BS move, and I agree with you. But to then say it's sort of like somebody punches you, in the stomach, and then your reaction is, okay, well then I can shoot him, and that's the equivalent of what the Justice Department right now is doing. This is ridiculous. It is ridiculous, and it's particularly ridiculous when you say, okay, wait a minute. So they disrupted a religious service for 20 minutes, and we want to send 39 people to prison, but when a group of I'm gonna.
Well, I'll give you the example they're using.
I just want to finish. I want to finish my thought. I was
Okay.
going to use a word that I'm not going to use, but a group of rioters break down the doors at the Capitol, break the windows, injure cops, to a point where some of them died as a result, and then go inside, defecate in Nancy Pelosi's office, take over the chamber, make everybody in Congress hide, screaming, hang Mike Pence. They not only get pardoned after getting convicted, they're called patriots. How do you square this? How do you square this?
Well, okay, so the reason I was about to interrupt you, and I'm glad you stopped and rolled those straight forward. I'm sitting here in Washington, D.C. I was at the Department of Justice today, and over at the DC as well. I will tell you that one of the things I heard was the what I like to refer to as an old friend of mine, John Clamacco, who's now passed on, used to call the goosey gander rule. John used to say, "Be careful of what you're arguing for, because you're going to see it used against you." And that's kind of the feeling. The feeling is, "Hey, you guys, you went deep on J6. We're going to go deep here. You went deep on on abortion protesters. We're doing the same thing here." It's just to use my expression again. It's whose ox is getting gored, and that's a problem.
You see some equivalency of January 6th where these guys were
I'm
clear, where they
I'm
where
telling
they
you what
injured
the
police.
thinking is. I'm telling you what the thinking
They,
is. I'm telling you that the Department of Justice does see an equivalency between what happened to J6, what happened in this church, what happened to the abortion protesters, what happened. I think that was out of I want to say the 11th Circuit case. Yes, there is. They do view that as an
it's
equivalency, and
BS.
I'm telling you that
They're dishonest. They are dishonest. They know there's not an equivalency, and this is a political thing. There's no equivalency. How do you compare the church to injuring cops? Because that's what they're saying about ICE. Is the worst thing you can do, and I'm not arguing this, is to go after a cop, to throw something at a cop. These cops were assaulted with sticks, and they were beaten to a pulp. And so if their concern is cops, the way they said, they're treating these cops like garbage, like crap with January 6th. And you cannot square this.
and look, I'm going to tell you the way they view it. The way that Department of Justice views it is that, just like with January 6th protesters, they cast this incredibly wide net that people who were just basically what's called mere presence were being prosecuted, were being sent to prison. That therefore you've got something here where people were trying to worship, and you had people coming in a concerted effort to disrupt the protest because they did not like what the pastor was saying or doing outside of, not inside of the church, but outside of the church. And this points to what I think has been a problem in the criminal justice system as long as I've been practicing, which is over 40 years. Whoever is in charge gets to write the history, gets to write the rules, and they're the ones with the guns and badges.
Okay, I hear you, and I do think you're right. I think Democrats, believe me, I think Democrats have so screwed things up in this country that, they can take a good idea and then just take it so far that they just ruin everything. And I think they've done that. But I think what Republicans are doing is despicable right now. I mean, on both sides, I hate it. But I want to just address something you said, because I am so sick of hearing this, that you're saying, yeah, there were people who were just happened to be in the Capitol and they were swept up in this big net. Baloney. When you're standing outside and you see people who break into the Capitol through windows and pounding down doors and injuring police officers, you're not going in as a tourist anymore. I'm sorry. That's just not the way people think. If you see that and you go into, you're part of them. And I'm just so sick of hearing, oh, they were just tourists. Baloney. They weren't tourists. They saw people.
Look, I will tell you that I saw prosecutions. I looked at case files of people who were prosecuted for January 6th. I agree with you. There were people who, based on what the evidence was that I looked at, were good for it. There were also people who were swept up in it who never should have been prosecuted. Yeah. There were people who were hammered in normal times, never would have been prosecuted by the U.S. attorney. So
you release everybody. So you pardon everybody.
No, that isn't. I understand that's a great argument, but that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, if you're taking somebody and not judging them individually, but saying I'm going to condemn you because you were there, it's the same kind of thinking. The same kind of thinking where you say anybody who entered that church, we're going to sweep up and indict 39 people. if you also say anybody who entered the Capitol, we're going to sweep you up, we're going to prosecute you. I understand that. I get that at a visceral level. That is not the way the criminal justice system should work.
I will say, I read the indictment. There's one thing in here where I could see them prosecuting one person, and I'll tell you what it is. There is something where they say, inside the church, one of these protesters, and this is a quote, disrupted the service by chanting, "This ain't God's house. This is the house of the devil." And then the person screamed Nazi to a family that's sitting there, with these parents with their kids. And in the congregants' faces, they scream Nazi and ask the children, quote, "Do you know your parents are Nazis? They are going to burn in hell." I could see them prosecuting that person. I could see that, because that is hyper aggressive. There is a constitutional right to freedom of religion. And at a point, it does cross the line. And I could see them prosecuting that person. I can. Even though there's a First Amendment right, I see it there. Don Lemon, it's ridiculous. And people who are in the church, yeah, I know you can make the argument, but people violate laws all the time, and they have to pick and choose who they're going to prosecute and who they're not. And I got to tell you, Mark, I get it. I know that the Democrats have done it. They did it with Trump, with Stormy Daniels. I think Letitia.
By the way, I always have said, that one was a state court case. The federal case on the classified documents, to my mind, I will never get over. To my mind, who is it for a archivist to say that the president, who is at the height, whoever the president is, classified materials are not some sacrosanct item that is like uranium, nuclear enriched uranium. They are documents that are being used so that the commander in chief can make decisions.
Right, and he's not the commander in chief. He's not the commander in chief anymore. And he took documents for the next president.
By the way, he gets briefings. Traditionally, we get briefings too. That classified documents prosecution, I think, is what opened the door to all of this. Frankly, I think that was one of the most egregious misuses of federal criminal power ever. And that is what opened the door to all of this.
So when somebody is personally aggrieved, and I'm not saying he wasn't, but when somebody is personally aggrieved and then they assume power, they can just go after everybody. Everybody.
No, but you know what ended up happening? I go back to the Clinton era. Clinton era, you had a SCOTUS decision, Jones versus Clinton. Unanimous, but I think it was only 8-0. Somebody recused themselves. Unanimous that the president could be sued during his term for something that was unrelated. So you had, against that backdrop, you started having what ended up being Whitewater, what ended up being the Monica Lewinsky investigation by an independent counsel. Fast forward, now you get the immunity decision by SCOTUS, basically giving free rein to the executive, whoever's sitting as commander-in-chief, to commit any acts. I remember during those oral arguments and the briefing, people were saying, could you tell the Navy SEALs, if you were the president, to go out and assassinate somebody? And they said yes. Well, guess what? We now have that happening. It's gunboats off of Venezuela, or gunboat or blowing supposed drug runners without any kind of justification out of the water, other than you've got intelligence. It is a natural outgrowth of what is happening in the U.S. Supreme Court, what they comment. I don't know that I disagree with the opinions, but those are the law. And when you've got that law and you're in the executive branch, you push the envelope.
Yeah, but you know what's going to happen by him pushing the envelope? I think this, I don't know, it's so funny. I kind of studied this all my life. And in politics, yeah, the country's divided 50-50, but that's a big illusion. It doesn't matter if it's 50-50. It doesn't matter. What matters is which side feels more strongly about getting out there and voting. That's what matters. Because if the Democrats are more animated and more likely to go to the polls, they're going to win. Because it's not about who believes something, it's who votes. And the people who vote are the people who are pissed off. And it's true. When Biden was president, there were a lot of people who were pissed off on the Republican side, and they were just more interested in voting than Democrats. And that's why Republicans won. Democrats are way more pissed off than Republicans right now. They are going to go to the polls in much bigger numbers than Republicans. And the Republicans are going to get their asses kicked in November, not because the country's divided a certain way. It's because the Democrats are more likely to go to the polls or get an absentee ballot and vote. And it's that simple. And Trump is goading the Democrats into feeling a passion for voting. So it's short-term gain. It is long-term loss. I don't see how you can view that any differently.
I don't necessarily view it any differently, except the one thing that I would mention is that I think a lot more of what happens, especially in the midterms, is a function of the economy. And I think if the economy is and affordability is still a hot button topic, issue, and real, that you're going to see a Republican wipeout. If that's the case, then we're going to have 2 years of hell on earth. That's, I think, what is, if I'm doing a bell curve of projections or predictions, that's what I think is going to happen. Speaking of which, can I do a hard segue? Because I've been meaning to ask you a question since yesterday, completely off topic.
Okay.
Will you answer some for me? You were, as I remember, TMZ reported during, the Celeste Rivas case. Okay, so this is completely. We're off of this for a second, and we're going back to
This is
Celeste
This
Rivas.
is David, the singer, who's a suspect in her death.
And not just a suspect. What Lauren Conlin or somebody found. Lauren works at LA Magazine. In full disclosure, Lauren found a application that was attached as an exhibit to a motion to quash in Texas. In there, it had a number of very interesting things that had not been reported. Number one was that, contrary to a lot of this nonsense that was being reported, and you and I talked about, I said this was not or is not what's something that is ridiculous, an investigative grand jury. The prosecutor used the term that David was a target. Target. That has a specific meaning. That means we're coming after you.
Right.
Number one. Number two, I'm going to come to your defense here, Harvey. You were lambasted. Do you remember this, for reporting that the body was dismembered? I remember it vividly. I had guys tweeting at me that was irresponsible, blah, blah, blah. The DA in the application to Judge Richmond, which was attached as an exhibit, described the body as being found as dismembered.
Yeah.
And I just, one of these things, and I brought this up in a recent trial I had. The LAPD then went to the LA Superior Court to get an order to basically shut down the coroner's office. I don't understand where we're at. You want to talk about little steps in government overreach? How did you get lambasted when you report accurately in retrospect? How did the LAPD then go to try to shut down what the coroner says or can say? And how is that America in a murder investigation? It's mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, I mean, over 20 years of doing TMZ, I've seen a bunch of cases where sheriff's officials, I can't say a bunch, but cases where sheriff's officials or police officials will come out and say, TMZ was wrong about such and such. We're not going to make this stuff up. I mean, we know it. And, I've always kind of felt that eventually it comes out. So, I knew it at the time, and obviously we didn't apologize because we knew it was true. And so,
well, I just remember so many people from law enforcement, the authorities, just saying no, it's wrong,
right,
pushing back. I think there's even a press release or a press statement, and I just don't understand. I mean, that, to my mind, that is the definition of propaganda.
I'm stunned that with somebody that with your experience, and especially in criminal defense, that you are in any way surprised that there might be misinformation by people on the other side. I mean, that is standard operating procedure. I'm amazed you're even saying this, honestly.
Do you want to know why? I will give you my thinking. My
That you
thinking
want
was
to come to
you
my
were
defense.
yeah. I remember how sure you were. You were I mean, you said, I know I have I don't know if you said unimpeachable, but something
Yeah,
vouching for the source, which you
we were talking to
generally,
people in the middle of the investigation.
right. And they came out and just said basically dead wrong. I
Right.
mean, absolutely not wrong. And then nobody knew at the time until it came out that they had gone to shut down the medical examiner's office to the point where the medical examiner actually issued a statement that is on their website, which I have used in a courtroom.
We broke the story before the medical examiner fessed up to it that there was a conflict between the medical examiner and the police. And we were talking about that. And there has been a lot of tension, especially in this case. So, yeah, I am shocked you're. It honestly.
I just am. I mean, it's mind-boggling to me that the authorities think that they can. I mean, down to this point of making up this idea of an investigative grand jury, and now you can see where they actually called it, David D4, a target in writing to a judge, submitted in order to get the judge to act. I mean, a target means something. You have witnesses, you have subjects, you get to graduate as a target. That means you're in the crosshairs. There's no other way to interpret that. That is what it means. And at the same time, they're denying that also. I just don't understand it. I guess maybe I'm naive, but having done this, how do they just forget that there's things like the internet, or that there's things where they think we're in an AI world and they can just later on say this wasn't true, it didn't happen,
Yeah.
nothing to see here?
You know, Mark, 8 months into TMZ, a long time ago, 20 years ago, we got a tip that Mel Gibson got arrested for drunk driving. And we broke that story. And then we got a call. I actually got a call from somebody who said, this is way more than drunk driving. He went on this anti-Semitic tirade against the officer, who happened to be Jewish. And I called the sheriff's department, and they said to me, absolutely not true. And if you post that story, you will ruin TMZ. You will ruin your career. It is an absolute lie, not true. And all day long, I was going back to one source in particular saying, they keep telling me it's not true. And then I find out that the officer was forced to rewrite the report, and there were 4 pages in that report outlining all the anti-Semitic stuff, and that the sheriff ordered the deputy to rewrite the report and keep all that out. And the sheriff's department said to me, absolute lie. You are going to ruin TMZ. This is a lie. And then after 5 or 6 of those volleys, somebody was angry enough that they said, I'm going to fax you those 4 pages. And I heard my fax machine go, and all of a sudden, these 4 pages come out. And I call the sheriff's department and I say, I got the 4 pages now. Can I read them to you? And afterward, the person on the phone said, we are going to submit all the information to the district attorney. And I said, not exactly my question. Why did you lie to me all day? And they said, we're going to submit the information to the district attorney. And I asked it 2 more times, and they wouldn't fess up to the fact that they lied all day long because the sheriff had a relationship with Mel Gibson, with one of these brotherhood organizations. And when we broke that story, I spent more time talking about the sheriff than I did Mel Gibson. It was so outrageous.
I remember. But by the way, and maybe the last subject as I freewheel here, the Epstein files, which we've talked about, and once again, the government has basically kind of, with our thread today, the government has basically kind of said one thing and done another. It is amazing to me as I look through those files, the obvious, I guess I will call it intelligence asset that Jeffrey Epstein was, and what the operation was that he was running, and how little this has been covered, and and how much we were lied to when that was a conspiracy, so-called conspiracy theory. And if you look at the files and the raw documents, it's inescapable that he was an intelligence asset. And it's almost lost in the Casey Wasserman story, for those who don't know, who's now having to sell his agency in Los Angeles, and he's being pressured to step down from LA 28, which is the Olympics, or being lost in Lex Wexner trying to act like he's never met the guy before, as there is all kinds of money that is flying out of his accounts.
Well,
and his lawyers telling him to shut the fuck up.
And Ludnick, who is just lying. I mean, just lying.
And the amount it's this, and I understand it's almost like I'm naive, but I just cannot understand how we just keep getting lied to repeatedly. Nothing to see here, nothing to see here. And I remember talking to a very good friend of mine who I don't want to betray, but he publicly was saying, "Oh, if he was an intelligence asset, I would have known." Blah 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 blah. There's no question he was an intelligence asset. There's no other way to interpret what was going on here. The compromise. It's a prototypical intelligence operation that has been exposed, and the idea that somehow that is just kind of slipped the consciousness, because we want to talk about Casey Wasserman telling Ghislaine Maxwell that she looks good in tight leather pants. There's something just wrong there.
Yeah, listen, I remember. You know, it's so funny what you're talking about is really it's the real reason why Americans don't trust government. And you know, I remember this. I had this obsession as a kid when I was 15, 16 years old with the Kennedy assassination. And I somehow got involved at that age with all these guys, Mark Lane and David Lifton and all the guys who were questioning the Warren Commission. And when I was that young, I was just thinking, my God, this government is lying, just lying. They're using the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court to propagate these lies, and the president is doing it. And I was just thinking to myself, I have become so cynical, so young, and I remember just really being upset about it. But I've known since then that the government just lies to us. They lie to us about all sorts of things. They lied to us, you know, with the sheriff's department and Mel Gibson. They lied about David and Celeste Rivas. They lied about the Kennedy assassination. They lied about Epstein. They lie about UFOs.
They
just
lied
lie.
through COVID. They lied. They just lie.
They
assume that you're. It's just astonishing, and I guess part of my own childlike naivete that I expect more.
But it is the saddest thing. It is just the saddest thing, but it's true. And I think most Americans, if you say, is the government truthful to us? I'm going to do a poll actually on TMZ on our website this weekend, and I'm going to say, is the United States government truthful to us, just generally? And I bet it's going to be over 90%.
You should do a poll, and you should ask, have they been truthful about the Epstein files? Have they been truthful about COVID? Have they been truthful locally about Celeste Rivas? Have they been truthful? You could go through every single one of these.
You know what? I'm going to do that. That's a great idea. And I'm going to, when I finish this, we're working on a documentary. I'm going to go do that part, and then I'm going to write these polls. And I'm going to do exactly what. Now, the only thing I want to ask before we leave is, you're in Washington, D.C. You could have gone to a million places to do a podcast where it was calm, and you choose Joe Stonecrab.
Correct. And by the way, do you know why? Because I actually was going to leave, but the conversation that I was overhearing on the next table over was so fascinating I couldn't leave.
Oh,
And
spill it. Spill it.
I think things are happening by the time this drops in Iran is what I'll leave it at that.
You're kidding me. Somebody
No.
somebody from the government was next to you?
I'm just going to leave it at that.
No.
By the way, my meal is getting cold.
I don't
so
care. I'll
talk to
buy you
after I
another
see the
meal.
poll
I'll buy you
results.
another meal. What did they say?
that today is the day. Friday is we're sitting here.
Are you serious?
I literally just heard it at the next table. So I'll leave it at that.
Holy crap.
Yeah. Wild. It's wild where the times we're living in.
Oh my God.
I'll see you next week, Harvey. Thank you.
Bye, Mark.